Hello, everyone. I am here with Stephen Trinkwald to talk about the game yesterday, or if you're listening to this later, it was on Wednesday, August 5th, between the Aces and the Mystics. And before we talk about it, I will introduce Stephen. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, love to do it. And what you're on the Double Down. How's that all going for you? That's a podcast, everyone. You should totally check it out.
Yeah, Double Down WNBA show. We recently got on Spotify. So if Spotify is your preferred podcast player, please check us out there. Otherwise, it's going great. My co-host Eric is great to work with. I'm probably not great to work with, but he puts up with me, so I'm very appreciative of that.
Oh gosh, no, you guys are both great to have on. And yeah, when am I getting onto your show? I'm sad that I haven't gotten on yet.
That's a great question. And actually, I don't know if you want to talk about this on the air, but I wanted to have you on for our overall season preview episode. And I meant to ask you how you did a 3-person show, because I noticed that to have 3 people on a Zoom call, I would either have to upgrade to a paid account or it could only be 40 minutes long. And that
God.
episode ended up being like 2 hours long. So did you pay for a Zoom account?
No, actually, I am still using my school account. So for people who don't know, I graduated college like in May, but I still have my account until the end of the summer, whenever exactly that is. So that should be coming up soon in the next 2 or 3 weeks, where I don't have this paid subscription or
That's
whatever.
what Eric thought, that you probably had a school account.
Yeah, I do. So we could, we could definitely figure something out, and I'll initiate the call and whatnot, and so that we can kind of have it go longer and stuff. So yeah, that would be awesome. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Uh, Love working with you guys. So um, yeah, that'll be really fun. Okay, so uh, let's see. We're gonna talk about the Aces and the Mystics games, as I said. That happened yesterday. It ended up being 83-77. Aces won, and my rankings are not pleased with this. I have the Mystics higher than the Aces, and I think I kind of need to. I'm not so sure after watching this game. But because of that, I definitely was watching this game more as like a Mystics fan and being like, you guys are missing everything, and it was very frustrating. So I just wanted to acknowledge that there's definitely some bias in when we're talking, but yeah, right now they both have a 3-2 record, and yeah, what were kind of they I know that you prepared with some like place like where they were ranked and stuff, and their offenses and defenses. You want to give a little background on what was going on in their first 4 games, I suppose?
Oh yeah, sure. Washington came into this game similar to kind of how they played all of last season, like leading the league in net rating by a pretty comfortable margin, and they are or were currently, at least going into yesterday, the number 1 offense in the league. Kind of middling in defense, they were number 5, and Vegas, of course, is much more considered a defensive team. They were 3rd in defense and number 6 in offense. So I was really interested to see that offense defense matchup from like when Washington has the ball, how Vegas would go about kind of getting them out of their rhythm, their playing of like the beautiful game where they do a lot of ball and body movement and are really able to produce a lot of nice looks for pretty much all of their players and get a lot of like system buckets. And I don't mean that as a pejorative, but Tebow just obviously runs like a beautiful system.
Yeah. So I think I think that Washington definitely was out of sorts on offense, at least. Washington, did I say that right? Yeah. Washington was out of sorts, I felt, on offense. Like, what did you see as kind of like the scheme that Vegas was putting out, and that kind of disrupted that, or did you even feel that they were disrupted on the offensive end?
I did feel like they were disrupted. It didn't really kind of bear out in the turnover numbers. But I thought Vegas did a really good job applying pressure and just kind of pressuring up, particularly Danielle Robinson when she was in the game.
Yeah.
And one thing that I thought was really effective that they were doing. was going over the pick and rolls, particularly with Ariel
Can you repeat
Atkins.
that? I think I stopped hearing you.
Oh, well, that's because I stopped talking.
Oh,
Um,
oh, okay.
that's okay. I'm just gonna I'll reset.
Yeah, continue.
One thing that I thought they did very effectively, particularly with Ariel Atkins, who came into this game leading the league in true shooting, was going over on the pick and rolls with her, and that led to Atkins taking 5 of her 8 attempts from the field from long two. They were Vegas was really selling out to stop attempts at the rim, and while that did lead to a lot of open jump shots for their bigs in particular and Misam in particular, it did lead to some longer twos by some of their guards.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I definitely, Snap had like a Snap Wilson. Check him out if you haven't already. He's got a podcast and is on Twitter all the time. But he had a nice, like he kind of did an overview of what happened during the game or things he noticed, and he definitely said something about the pressure that they were putting on the ball, that Vegas was putting on the ball every time um, that Washington was bringing the ball up. And did I say that? I don't even know. Vegas was putting pressure on the ball every time um, Washington brought the ball up. And so, yeah, I definitely noticed that, that at least forced one turnover with Leilani. D-Rob was killing it that game. And even when Maisha Hines-Allen was taking the ball up, I mean, Hamby just, like, she couldn't get around Hamby. I thought that was a really great matchup, too. And it definitely, like, they were making the first pass, like some passes, like, 30 feet from the basket, and, were very well covered, and that resulted in a couple turnovers. Um, and that was, frustrating to watch, but yeah, the ball pressure I definitely noticed for sure.
If I could continue on a point that you just made, I think that Vegas is pretty well suited to deal with Maisha Hines Allen just with their front court combination of
Yeah,
Asia Wilson and De'Erica Hamby. Like both of those players have the strength and athleticism to not get completely overmatched by Hines Allen's combination of strength and athleticism, getting to the rim, just kind of putting her body into you or blowing by slower bigs.
absolutely. I totally agree. Because either one who was on her was fine. And then I thought that, with Emma and Maisha it was fine out there, but as soon as you had Hawkins out there with Hawkins just wasn't doing well in the front court, I felt. But I think you make a good point there as well. What did you think about Hawkins? Did you notice that was kind of a mismatch there? Or,
Well, for Hawkins, if I'm not mistaken, this was her first game back from since only playing a couple minutes in their season opener
right.
and kind of tweaking her back. So she definitely did not seem like the Tiana Hawkins that we all kind of know and love, and the hyper efficient, 60% from two, 36% from three Tiana Hawkins of last season. But I thought it was just kind of a little bit of a feeling out game. Overall, I don't think I'm like too worried about her like if these two teams were to meet up in a playoff matchup. But it was just kind of a slower game for her, I would say.
Yeah, I thought anytime that she was going to go again, like Hamby was a little bit too quick for her. Asia was a little bit, like, was able to, post her up every time. But I thought that it actually wasn't that bad because, if Asia, like, she could take Asia out of the paint, basically, on the offensive end. So it kind of was she was able to be sort of effective. So I agree. I wasn't upset with her play either. Yeah. Um,
And
we're
the thing about having a player, um, who's maybe a little undermatched against Asia Wilson, who I think, had a pretty terrific game, particularly offensively and getting to the free throw line in particular. But, with so many of these Vegas lineups, you just have someone where you can completely sell out on to force a hard double on an Asia Wilson in the post.
yeah.
And a lot of times that caused some problems for Vegas.
Yeah, no, there were a couple times where I was like, there's literally a triple team on Asia. And the amazing thing is Asia was still able to, convert on that. And I mean, she's amazing, so it makes sense. But yeah, I definitely thought that was one good, that's going to be the strategy that Vegas has to deal with every time they go out on the court because they're known for not having their 3-point shooting. So did you notice did you also notice that they were, well, you said that already, so that's fine. Um, what other schemes did you kind of notice during the gameplay and stuff?
Well, one thing
If
I
any.
wanted to kind of talk about a little bit was just like the versatility, and she's a player who gets talked about a ton, so we don't have to spend too much time on it. But just the different things that Ariel Atkins allows you to do
Mhm.
defensively. She spends time on Angel McCautry or Kayla McBride guarding on the ball. Like she's a really great option to just throw on your best wing option. But to me, like she might even be better guarding like a Lindsay Allen or a Jackie Young, where she's able to just completely disregard your wing and cause havoc, digging down in the post or just clogging up driving lanes. And I thought she had a really effective defensive game, particularly when she was in that help role. But also, early in the game when she was the defender on Angel McCautry, who ended up heating up late, but it was a pretty miserable first quarter for Angel, and Atkins was there to force like 3 straight turnovers for her.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It was. I thought that Atkins did a good job on McCautry. It was a very strange game. I think the flow of the game was really was very slow at the beginning. I'd say, like Vegas didn't get their second bucket until 4 minutes left in the first quarter. It was, and then at the end of the quarter, in the next 4 minutes or whatever, it ended up they were down by 2. 21-19, in 4 minutes they were able to score 15 points. It was very, very slow at the beginning. But
Yeah, and speaking of slow, if you don't mind me jumping in, that kind
it,
of brings me to I think what was the story of I think the first 3 minutes of this game, which it was pretty obvious that Carolyn Swords just has no. If Elena Coates isn't on the floor, like Carolyn Swords has no place in this matchup, and she was pretty directly responsible for 4 buckets in a 5 possession span there for Washington. She gave up a drive to Emma Misamin. She had to switch out on a jumper for Aerial Powers where she really had no chance. Like Leilani Mitchell blew right by her immediately after that, and then a wide open 3 for Misamin. And again, in the span of 5 possessions here, and it's 11-2 Washington. 3 minutes into the game before and Carolyn Swords gets subbed out pretty quick.
yeah, I mean, she was retired, so yeah, I mean, she might not really necessarily should be, maybe should have kept her sneakers hung up, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I don't think it's desperate, honestly, but that was a little too strong. But you kind of get my point, I hope. Yeah, I think she didn't really. I didn't notice that, but she didn't get that many minutes, and she definitely started the game. So that's a good catch on your part. Who do you think over and underperformed during this game? Let's say who do you think, if anyone, or any performances that were really notable? I think for me, the ones that were notable, obviously, was D Rob. She got a lot of hype. 20 points. She was killing it on defense. Excuse me, just with all the pressure. Was there anyone else, and we can get into each player, but if was there anyone else who you kind of noticed?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about D Rob while we're on the topic.
Well,
Because I thought she really. Were you going to say something?
yeah, I was just thinking we'd list them and then we'd go through them more in depth after.
Okay.
But yeah,
I wouldn't call it overperforming, but I was definitely super encouraged by Emma Mieseman's game.
yeah,
Particularly like early on, her aggressiveness was very, very encouraging for a player whose aggressiveness is like comes into question at times.
hmm
Her willingness to just kind of take it to some of those Vegas bigs. Um, in terms of underperforming, Angel kind of had a weird game, but did really turn it on at the end there. Uh, I think we should talk about Jackie Young at some point because it's
yeah.
becoming a little bit of a problem. But those were kind of the players in terms of like over and underperforming that I
Yeah.
had.
I thought also, maybe I'm just looking at the stat line. I think Aerial Powers with only 6 points is a little bit concerning. Um, yeah, 2 for 9 from the floor isn't really good, but I actually kind of, well, yeah. Let's talk about so we said D Rob, Emma, and Powers, right? Did you say someone else?
Hey, Shay, you should take that again because it really broke up.
Oh, okay. So basically the three, I think we said three people. It was D Rob, who we was notable, Emma, and Powers. Did you say someone else?
I also mentioned Angel and Jackie Young.
And Angel and Jackie. Yeah, I definitely think we should get to all of them. But let's start with D Rob because I think she was the most notable. Here, let me just read people the her stat line to give you a little bit of an idea. If I can find it, D Rob, right? So she came off the bench. She ended up playing 24 minutes, 7 for 12 from the floor. She missed her two 3-point attempts. Went to the line 7 times, made 6 of them, and totaled with 20 points. So, she was doing it really well on the offensive end, obviously. And then also defensively, she was wreaking havoc. She had 2 steals, and she forced some turnovers too. So, yeah, she had a terrific game. Anything you want to add to her stat line, and then you can just go into whatever you want to talk about with her.
I mean, not specifically about the stats. 20 points on the 15 shooting possessions is very encouraging,
Yeah.
particularly for a player who, as is well documented over her career, doesn't really shoot threes. And Robinson is someone who, at times, is criticized for her shot selection and maybe more importantly, like where she stands on the court. Taking those spot up 16 footers in the corner, and she did have the mid range going in this game a little bit, particularly, around the elbows or the top of the key. But she was really Vegas's only option getting all the way to the rim. 6 attempts at the rim today. Very, very encouraging. And she was pretty effective there as well. Plus the defense that she provided.
Yeah, yeah, she was really, really terrific. What I think I may have had one more thing to say about her. Mm, yeah, I just like she's struggled. She struggled last year, I think, a little bit with Minnesota. Uh, like maybe she didn't. Let me look at. I didn't look. That's great. Yeah, I think her usage is going down a bit, and that's going to be really helpful um, for her efficiency. So I think that's a good thing to see. And then with her playing fewer minutes this year, um, I think that's going to help defensively. She's just going to be able to put so much pressure, so much more annoying pressure on who's ever bringing up the ball typically. So that's really good for her. I'm wondering, like, she was an all-star from 2013 to 2015, and we haven't seen her back. So I hope that she'll come back to those levels from those years. Anything else on D Rob?
No, I mean, it was a really great game. I thought she really changed the game for them. I did not think Lindsay Allen, although Allen was, I thought, very effective in kind of pushing the pace, and I don't think Robinson quite was playing with as much like tempo, just kind of getting it up the floor. Overall, Robinson was just a lot more effective than Allen in this game.
Yeah, yeah. And we also mentioned Emma Mieseman as someone who performed really well. I don't think she overperformed or underperformed. She just did what she normally does. But yeah, what notable things did you see there?
Well, just her aggression. 12 points on 8 shooting possessions in the first half, and she was kind of doing everything offensively, right? She wasn't kind of just waiting for the very open opportunities. She was driving to the hoop. She was taking threes offensively. She was scoring on cuts. Just her willingness to kind of take it to very good defenders, I thought was super encouraging.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you look how many she had 23 attempts, field goal attempts, and actually only 2 free throws. That's probably a little bit concerning there that she's not getting to the line. But she takes a bunch of threes, so something I'll look into and see if that's more of a trend. But yeah, no one else. Hines Allen had 11 field goals. Mitchell had 10. Powers had 9. Atkins at 8. I mean, it was all Emma on offense. She doubled everyone. more than doubled everyone. So I think that is good, and she has to, because she's their best player this year, and uh, so I that is definitely encouraging that she's kind of taking that step up. And she scored 24 points in 33 minutes, so she's the highest scorer on their team. So I think that she took the role that she's kind of has to this year, and yeah.
And one other thing I'll say about Emma, one thing our friend Gabe Ibrahim pointed out before this game was that Vegas came into this game number 2 in offensive rebounding percentage, and Washington was number 2 in defensive rebounding percentage. I thought Vegas did a really good job keeping. I'm sorry, I thought Washington did a really good job keeping Vegas off the offensive glass, and Miesemann and Hines Allen in particular did a really great job getting on their own offensive glass, each of them with 4 offensive rebounds. And I thought that was really a big indicator, or a big part of Washington being able to keep possessions alive, obviously, but they did not have a great day, particularly some of their starters from the field, Atkins and Powers in particular. And the offensive rebounding, I thought, really kind of buoyed them for a while.
Yeah, yeah, it was good. I think the one thing that I wasn't super impressed with Emma, I think she looked a little gassed at the end. Her shots were a little bit short. But I also thought when they were doing like an inside out game, high low game, I thought that her passes out of like a double team that came, I thought they were a little bit weak, and so that gave it was just floating through the air kind of slowly, the ball that is. And so then I think it was I noticed it when McCautry was guarding Atkins, but she went down to help on Emma, and then Emma did a very slow pass, and McCautry had time to recover. So I thought that was I saw that twice during the game. I think she should pass a little bit harder. Also, what do I know? Maybe having to pass over people makes the ball go slower in the air. I don't know, but I think there's a way to figure out how to make a sharp pass out of there. So that's the thing that I would think that she's sort of looking at when she's looking at film.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did not think it was a particularly promising passing game from Emma Miesemann.
Yeah. I don't think we need to talk too much about Powers unless you have something specific you want to say.
No, I didn't think that she. She obviously had a very inefficient game, and she's certainly capable of playing better. But she was guarded by 2 pretty good defenders, and she'll have better games to be sure.
Yeah. I think that's something that I'm noticing. Maybe this happens in normal seasons, but what I noticed this season is you have and I tweeted about this today, but you have your 1 or 2 people that or 1 or 2 players who, they're starters and they will score 20 some points every day, 15, 20 points. And then someone else is going to step up that you're not expecting, like D-Rob. Then it's kind of like a whack-a-mole. If you end up, you guard Wilson really hard, with their double and triple teams, and then, D-Rob is killing it that game. And I just felt like this game for the Mystics, I don't think anyone really stepped up. So, and got a lot of points that they weren't expecting. So, Atkins with 9, Powers with 6. It's just, and then I think their bench is a little bit short. And Hawkins didn't she's just coming off injury. So I think that's what made it pretty difficult for the Mystics to take over this game. Sorry, we had some other people we wanted to talk about. You said, oh man, I already forget who over and underperformed. Oh, nope, Jackie Young, and there was one other person, right?
Well, Angel McCautry was a name that I brought up as maybe not necessarily an underperformer, because she really had some strong moments in the 4th quarter.
Yeah.
But over the first 3 quarters, it was kind of a weird one for her.
Yeah, right. So yeah, let's talk about Jackie Young. She came off the bench. She started most games last year, so this is kind of surprising. She played only 15 minutes, no points or anything. Just kind of didn't have a great game. What do you think about what's happening with Jackie?
Well, the thing that I've said about Jackie Young for a while now is, so many people I think focus on her jump shot with good reason, but I don't even think she necessarily has to develop a great outside shot. She just really needs to one or the other, right? She has to either get a shot or she has to start finishing at the rim. 0 for 3 in this game, all 3 attempts right at the rim. 2 of them were against smaller players. The third one over Hawkins, and she's just got to finish those. Like she's a bigger, stronger player than both of those smaller guards, Leslie and Petty, and she's got to finish those at the basket. She was right there. They're very makeable layups, and if you are a complete non-factor from the outside and you're not even a threat to attack a closeout, if they do ever come close out on you, like you are just going to be ignored. And that's exactly what Ariel Atkins did whenever they were matched up.
Yeah. It's hard to see what her future in the league kind of is if she's not making any buckets anywhere. But she's got a great basketball body, and if she can just finish, I mean she's 6'1", 6 feet tall. Like she should be able to get to the basket and finish those. But it's just we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, she was a terrific finisher around the rim in college, and I just don't quite get it because it seems to be there. You know what I'm saying? Like she gets there. She gets to the line a decent amount over her career, but the ball just doesn't fall in the rim when it's a very makeable layup.
Right. Yeah. Were there any lineups that you didn't like or did like a lot? For me, I think I guess I'll answer this first. My first, I noticed like at the end of the first half, first quarter, it was just like this. The second unit of Washington was like looked so out of sorts, and like the chemistry wasn't there. They were able to score, because they had Maisha Hines Allen out there still, and people were just they made their shots, but it was just like I was like, why are there 4 people? They were just running into each other a bit, but that's kind of the only lineup I noticed that I didn't really like. I thought that everything else was fine.
Yeah, I mean, those minutes with Leslie and Petty on the floor together, I still have some questions overall about. I mean, already this season, like Washington has far exceeded my expectations, and but I still have a lot of questions about their players, pretty much like 7 through 10. Essence Carson is fine. Tiana Hawkins, I think, is a good bench big, but those other bench players, Petty, Leslie, and Coates, I am not huge believers of. For Vegas, I mean, I'm going to repeat myself, I feel like, but anytime you're having Lindsay Allen and Jackie Young on the floor together, Jackie Young and Carolyn Swords on the floor together, particularly those few minutes that Young and Swords were on the court together, like both of those players are just being completely ignored. Like there was one play I remember specifically, like they were both on like the left side of the court, and the ball was on the right side, and like there was just no attention being paid to them whatsoever. So, Bill is a good coach, and I think he's a little limited in kind of the combinations he can run out here, but you got to, when you're playing one of those kind of really big liabilities, you got to make sure they're surrounded with as much talent as possible.
Right.
Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say regarding lineups, this isn't necessarily a lineup thing, but, if you're going to play your 6th woman like 17 straight minutes to close the half, and 25 minutes straight in the game if you count starting the second half as well, like the halftime is enough of a break, but the 17 straight minutes, like just start the player. You know what I'm saying? Like that is a ton of wear and tear on your body, even with the quarter break. Like you're not doing her any favors by having her come off the bench just to play 17 straight game minutes.
Yeah, he's talking about Hamby. If anyone wasn't.
Oh, thank you.
Clear on
I should probably use names when talking about basketball players.
Yeah. No, it's fine. You said 6th woman. I knew exactly who you're talking about. Yeah. I mean, it is strange. I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe just to tire out the other team or something, like the other team's front court a little bit. But it's not like Swords is going to do that much. So I think you're right. I was very surprised not to see Hamby starting this year. I like the lineup with who was with Hamby and Wilson. Who else was there that I was thinking about? Whatever. Yeah, Hamby, Wilson, and McCautry seems like a really good lineup to me. So I don't know. It is strange. I agree. Uh, but yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to say about this, or we can wrap it up of like um, any other comments? Because I want to know where you think this leaves both teams, where you think they're going. But before we get to that question, if there's anything else you want to mention about the game itself, like definitely, here's your time.
I think Kayla McBride had a really good game, particularly defensively. She's a player who I have a lot of admiration for. I think she's a really great two-way player. She's really, of course, Vegas's only real threat from behind the arc, and I thought she just did a really great job defensively when she was matched up against Ariel Atkins.
Great. So then, where do you think this leaves both teams? So they're both 3-2. I don't know who they're playing this week, but where do you, what were you thinking they were, when you were coming into the game? How did you leave the game feeling differently about both teams? Start with Washington. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Washington is like a premier team really in the league. Like I think, and they've already, like I said, exceeded my expectations. They're definitely much better than I thought they were going to be. They're going to have a really great offense. Maisha Hines-Allen has proved that she belongs in the league, and I definitely had some doubts there. But I still don't think that they have a real shot at like competing for a championship. I don't think they're going to finish the season with the best net rating in the league like they had coming into this game. They might finish with the best offense. Like I do think they have good enough players to do that at least. But I think both these teams are kind of, second tier for Vegas, maybe third tier for Washington type teams where, I think at this point you can definitely pencil them in, both of them into the playoffs, right? And maybe Vegas can
Yeah.
get up to that in that top four. I don't really see that happening for Washington, but again, I was lower on them to start. I was lower on Vegas to start too, but I think Vegas has already kind of showed me that the roster talent is there, and they're going to be competing mostly because I had serious doubts about what Angel McCautry was going to bring to the Aces this year, and she's shown at least she's still going to be a useful player. So, how are you kind of feeling about these teams as someone who I think was pretty high on Washington, at least more so than Vegas coming into this one?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought Washington was going to win it before Belladon left. So I was really high on them. Then I was not so high on them because I thought that and I still think this, that they have a really short roster, not a deep bench at all. I mean, now that I've seen Hines-Allen play, I'm like, okay, it's not quite as shallow as I thought it was, but I'm not. I still think that they only go, as you said, 7 deep, and Carson isn't really going to be adding that much off the bench, and Hawkins it was hurt, so and might still be, and yeah, I think that's really, and then Coates, Petty, and Leslie aren't really contributing too much. So I think the lack of depth is going to hurt teams so much after 10 games, after 15 games. It's just going to be, after 22 games, it's just going to be such a drag. And that is where I think the Mystics will be plagued. It's just, if you, like, just having an 8th player who can really contribute, or, like, even their 6th and 7th players who could really contribute offensively and defensively, it's just, I think that's night and day in a situation like this. So, I'm kind of, that's where I felt about the Mystics after not having, after a couple players dropped out. And I'm kind of returning to that feeling after watching this game of like, I just don't, it's so short. The bench is so short, but, and as soon as one player goes down on any of the team, it's just, they will go from a high, like they're going to drop a lot. So, yeah, and then Vegas, I think that I'm a little bit more encouraged, and I read Justin Carter, I think is his name. Is that right? Justin
Okay.
Carter. Yeah. So Justin Carter had an article today that was really great, and I made sure to retweet it and praised it. It was wonderful, and and it just was saying, like, you don't really need a lot of 3-point shooting, and And I noticed in this game, like, they didn't need 3-point shooting really. They were 4 for 10. 40% is terrific, and they only took 10. That's like, as long, and one of the conclusions of the article, and I agree with the small sample size that was taken from the last 10 years or so, of you don't really need the best 3-point. You don't need to take a ton of attempts from behind the arc, but you do need to have a good percentage, and you need to be shooting efficiently there. So they are. I let's see, what are they this season so far? They are 38% from behind the arc on 52 attempts. So that's good. I don't know what other teams have done with their 3-point attempts. Yeah, they're the lowest. That's 12th in the league. So yeah, I think that that's not as big of a concern for me. So it's making me think that Las Vegas could actually do pretty well. I think they might be able to get a bye too. Before this game, I thought the Mystics were third, and that's that's a high number. That's a high number, but I still might leave them there. We'll see how they perform later this week, but yeah, Vegas is definitely going up, and Washington is going down for me after this game for sure.
3, that seems pretty high to me. But for Washington, but
yeah, I think so too.
One other thing I think, particularly for a team like Vegas, who obviously does not shoot a lot of threes, but they're really great at getting to the free throw line, right? And and they take a lot of their attempts. As much as we like to make jokes about the mid ranges and stuff, that they do still take a lot of their attempts at the rim. They put pressure on the basket offensively, and that helps. That is more important than shooting threes if you can get right to the rim,
right.
and get to the free throw line, obviously. And Vegas essentially tripled up Washington at the free throw line last night, and that was a huge difference in the game.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, want to tell people where they can find you and things?
Sure. Please listen to Eric and my podcast, Double Down WNBA. That's Eric Nimchok, by the way. We talk about the WNBA. The last few weeks, we've been doing shows just like this, where we talk about specific games. This upcoming Monday, if this show ends up being released, we will be doing kind of like a 2-week check-in on each of the teams, and really kind of seeing what we think of them so far, and maybe reevaluating some of our expectations that we had coming into the year.
Great. Yeah, definitely go check them out at the Double Down, and follow Steven at Trinkwald on Twitter, and follow me at WNBA with Shay. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, mostly Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Just go there. You'll hear my stuff. Oh, and just follow me on all the podcasts, and you'll learn a lot about the WNBA and enjoy listening to me have conversations about it. Thanks guys for listening.